It's a river that over the years has been dredged, has been straightened, has had riparian areas removed, and has had a lot of development. It's a river that has quarries along close to its bank. It's also a river that has many housing developments near its banks. The river is very important to the community, and it's a river that runs through a number of urban areas. Am I talking about the Boise River? No. The difference is that this river had its flood, and it had a flood in 1997 that cost close to $1 billion. So they basically had their $1 billion flood. It's a river that is very similar to the Boise River. As I said, they've had their flood, and as a result of that, the community developed what's called the Truckee River Flood Project. And so today, we're here to kind of learn lessons learned and what we can learn as a community from another community that's been through the flooding process, as well as how they value the river. And so Jay Aldean is the executive director of the Truckee River Flood Management Project. And so please welcome him. And Jay? That's your pointer.
I'm a challenged engineer, so it's either, okay, got it. I think we got it. Good afternoon, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to try to give you some things that we have learned in the community. Jay Aldean, and I am the executive director of the Truckee River Flood Management Authority, which is a mouthful. I hate saying that. I told the mayor as he left that, a saying that you ought to use if you're a flood person is building in the floodplain is like pitching a tent when you're camping on a four-lane highway when there's no cars coming. I also have a longer version of a flood joke that is quite good. It's about the Johnstown flood back in Pennsylvania when the dam broke and it killed about 2,000 people. One of the largest public works disasters in the United States. Come on, that way, or do I have to point somewhere?
I'm not sure that's pointed for.
Well, no, I'm just. Oh, yeah, you ought to have the fob in there so that it. There we go. It's interesting. I was looking at some pictures of the Boise River, and that's not unlike a lot of sections of the Boise River. Our rivers are very similar in size as well. Our 100-year discharge is around 20,000 CFS. Flood stage between 6,000 and 7,000 CFS. And although I'm an engineer and the requirement for holding my position is being an engineer, I haven't studied all the technical data, so I probably won't be able to answer some of those questions. But what I can do is I understand the complexity of how our project's put together. We start at Lake Tahoe officially, and we move all the way about 120 miles to Pyramid Lake. The upper left-hand corner is Emerald Bay in Tahoe. A lot of famous photographs have been taken there. And then in the lower right corner, you see the pyramid. And actually, I do have a pointer. Right there is the pyramid, and that's where the name of the lake came from. That lake is owned wholly by the Paiute reservation. It's on the Paiute reservation, so it's completely controlled by the Indian tribe. Therefore, we discharge to another nation, and let me tell you, that's an issue in and of itself. Again, you see that there's about 6 reservoirs in our watershed. Tahoe being the largest. It's got about 4 or 5 feet of storage, and when you're storing over the size of Tahoe, which is 20 miles by about 8 or 9 miles, you get a lot of flood storage. But we are in the same throes that Pat was speaking about with regarding irrigation. A lot of our reservoirs are purely domestic water or irrigation water, so there is no storage available. There's storage, you can see the series of reservoirs, all these plus Tahoe, before it arrives to the Reno-Sparks area of northern Nevada. Obviously, the majority of the watershed is in California. About 1,500 square miles of watershed at the east end of Sparks, where the river goes into the lower canyon, kind of on the edge, the east edge of that round circle. So if you could fit the state of Rhode Island in our watershed, just to give you kind of some magnitude. There's another good shot. You get a chance to see how the basin, the Tahoe Basin, which is right there, discharges into the other part of the regulated part of the watershed, and then it gets into the Reno-Sparks area, discharges into the lower canyon, and then it heads north, as you saw in the diagram, to Pyramid Lake. Tahoe being 1,600 feet deep, Pyramid is quite large. It's quite deep. It's 300 feet deep. So there's a lot of water storage in both. Pyramid, which is right there, used to be a lot bigger lake. Eventually, or earlier in the Bureau of Reclamation, which is known for irrigation projects, built the reclamation project of Lahontan. And that pulls water out of our basin and puts it into the Carson Basin, which is right here. Our project, being that we've flooded a number of times, and is about a 50-mile stretch, and it involves a number of different purposes, not only flood risk management, which is a term the Corps likes to use, but also restoration and recreation. I heard the questions that came, and I saw the presentations, and you guys are interested in the same things that our community was interested in. Again, another shot just to give you a little bit idea of the mountainous Pyramid right there. The other lake, Winnemucca Lake, used to be right there before the diversion. Tahoe, you see kind of the mountainous areas. Just to paint a picture for those that are not familiar with the Washoe County, Reno-Sparks area. Okay, does it rain in northern Nevada? We live in a desert, after all. I've heard that comment I don't know how many times. Major floods in the 1800s, almost every 10 years since then. Flash floods. The hydrology of our storm events kind of unusual. We get a good snowpack. In '97, we had a very deep snowpack. And then what happened is we get that rain that originates from the Hawaiian Islands area, and it comes straight over San Francisco, right over the hills to us, and it's warm. And it starts raining on that snowpack. So you get a combination of the melt, the storage melt, obviously, plus you get the rain that's already coming down, and you get these hellacious storm events that occur. We had certainly $1 billion in 6 counties, the way that the Corps likes to calculate benefits, and if anybody ever has any experience with that, the Corps said it was only $500 million for us, and that goes into that BC ratio that Pat was talking about. That same estimate, we figure it's a $2 billion project or flood event if we were to get that same event today. And yes, I mentioned climate change increasing flood risk over the United States, especially over Nevada, mainly because we get the Sierra Nevadas, if they drop 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, it changes our peak significantly. And we're a candidate, and we're actually the BUREC is studying a climate change analysis on the Truckee watershed, and we're grateful for that. See what it does to our peak flows. I can't tell you what the results are. It's coming up. They haven't picked the engineer to do that work yet. And I'll just breeze through a lot of these. And again, what the important thing is, Sparks, then Reno and Washoe County were the top 3 payoffs for FEMA for insurance. 1907, that's the Virginia Street Bridge. It is a twin arch that is actually falling down. We had a state car inspection park their car right there on that edge of the bridge, and the weight of the rear wheels punctured the sidewalk and it went down. So they quit driving. They quit driving the buses over that bridge because of the fact they're afraid of what might happen. In the 50s, a number of floods. You see the debris. We are a debris-laden stream as well, very similar in behavior. And Mr. Sweet, you would probably pull the rest of your hair out if you had to take care of ours. Booth Street, Center Street Bridge, again in the 50s. This is the debris on the the downstream end. You should see the debris on the upstream end. And I didn't bring debris pictures. I just too much to say, and I'm going to try to get it done as fast as possible. Homes and sparks, that was during the '86 event. Downtown Reno, that was the '97 event. This being the Virginia Street Bridge. This is the Mates Hotel that they imploded about 10 years ago. This is now City Hall. Interestingly enough, another side story, I used to be the chief drainage engineer for the city of San Antonio, Texas. Their EOC, their Emergency Operating Center, is downtown, and it's 3 floors below downtown. That building is 10 feet of water will get there, even if it floods between what they call the Olmus Basin Dam and the downtown section. So I asked the question, I'm talking to the fire and the police guys, and I'm saying, this floods. Have you done an analysis to see if a log coming down would knock your door in? Because a big tree could easily puncture, in all deference to the mayor's story, 7-10 inches of water will move a car going over a low water crossing. So if somebody is 10 feet deep up to neck high, that person isn't walking. But then you know how engineers pick apart movies. Again, this is the eastern side of Sparks. Here's the river. You can see the outline. This is the industrial area. This is the economic generating engine for northern Nevada. There's 30,000 jobs collectively in this area and in the portion that's just a little bit south of that, the north being pointing up. Our airport reminds me of Dilbert and Elbonians, and the guys walking through the mud. And if those of you that read that comic strip, East Side subdivision. Now, none of these houses, believe it or not, none of these houses I'm pointing to flooded. Their crawl spaces flooded, but no water got in any of the first floors of those houses, which is pretty amazing. And considering the FEMA information we have is a foot too low, so they built their houses too low, that complicates our solution and how we fix that. Hidden Meadows, that's on this side of this stream. This is the lower area, and I've got a couple of pictures that capture the full flood pool. You're talking about zoo animals. Well, there were a bunch of sheep right here, and the darn things went this way instead of that way. And I don't know, Mark, what did we lose? About 100 sheep or so, maybe 50 head of sheep. And this is the agricultural experimental station owned by University of Nevada at Reno. And just so in case I start twitching, being in this particular building, I'm much more at home standing at UNR than I am in Boise State University. We beat you in football one year. And we'll remember that for the rest of our lives, because I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. That's what I said, 1 year. But that's all it has to be, though, is once, because then it shows possibility. In 2005, we got another flood event. This is looking from Hidden Valley, looking north by northwest. No, it's not the movie. Again, the industrial area in Sparks. This was about a 50-year flood in 2005. It wasn't, I don't know, close enough. The reason why I keep looking over there, Mark Forrest, that works for HDR, is a very good friend of mine, did a lot of work and a lot of hydrologic work for our organization, and so he knows a lot more about technical aspects of this project than I do. But I can at least inform you on some of the lessons learned, and I think that's what you're wanting to get out of this discussion. Anyhow, have we had floods? 07, 09, 28, 37, 50, 50, 55, 63, 64, 86, 97, and 05. And there's kind of the cumulative, or not cumulative, but the approximate return frequency to probably the nearest 5 years. Give you an idea of what we've experienced. And in the 50s, this right here, this group of storms right here, basically motivated the Corps to start working on our area. So they actually started a project in the early 60s to try to fix the problem. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So there is the inundation area of basically East Reno and Sparks, southern Sparks pretty much at the river. This is Reno. And you can see all that's covered, all those big industrial buildings that are covered up. There's our airport. Now you want to know why that American Airlines flight was. This is all industrial. There's 30,000 jobs there, and our community is 350,000, maybe 400,000 people. When you think about that, the impact, that's a huge number of adult wage earners working in just that one area. If we lose that area, the economic engine of our community collapses. People start moving east, down towards Fallon and Fernley, which isn't really all that bad, but even worse, they go over to California. I think we probably have a mutual feeling about that state. Wyatt floods, again, this is the east part. And oh, by the way, this is our treatment plant. It's a 45 MGD plant. Right here, there's a very, very high rock outcropping. And it's right in the valley of right the east end of the Truckee Meadows Valley. And what the Corps did is they came in and dynamited that out. And they changed the invert, caused head cutting, all sorts of problems, thinking that if they could lower, or they could get more water out of the detention facility, the God-made detention facility, then they would be able to alleviate the flooding. Well, it didn't happen. What have we done about it? So in the 60s, the Corps came in and excavated the Vista Reefs, they call it. That's just the term that they use it. They straightened a portion of the river in the lower canyon. There's some of the head cutting and some of the blighted areas. There's some of the straightened portions of the river. Incised the river channel, destabilized the banks, loss of species, lowered the groundwater, and impacted water quality. And there's an interesting statement. The individual that I replaced, the former director, made a statement that I used to just love, and it's called the unintended consequences of well-meaning people. And how many times have we come up against, well, they tried to do it. Yeah, they did, and look what they've done. Now they've left us with a bigger mess. So what did we look at? The Corps then came in and said, in the early 80s, and they started studying, and they were going to give us a project. In 1988, that project actually got federal authorization by Congress. Then, when in the 90s, it was shelved. The Corps is always changing. You ask the Corps. I love the Corps. I really, really do. I work very well with the Corps, and I will definitely say that every member of the Corps that I have ever worked with, except for Washington, are all great, competent people. It's Washington that screws everything up. But the point is that the cost-benefit analysis rules changed, and so our project dropped below 1. And Pat, as you were talking about the BC ratios, generally, well, it's always, unless you have California's congressional delegation to be able to ramrod something through. Reed's not good enough. He's feisty, but he's just not good enough. We're too small of a state. In 1996, though, Reed reauthorized the project and got us going again with the Corps of Engineers as the federal partner. So in 96, we reached out to the Corps. In 97, believe it or not, we had one of those floods. It's kind of like the punctuation mark on, yeah, you guys really need to do this. In 98, Washoe County initiated a 1/8 cent sales tax to be able to pay for a portion of the flood project. In 2000, the Community Coalition was formed, and it started looking at things much as this group of people right before me today. What can we do? What's out there? How can we do this? How can we make this work? What's possible? In 2005, the local governments formed, and Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County don't always work together. They're like any government. They're like any group of communities. The reason why they're separate communities is we want to be different from the other guy. And so they formed what they call the Flood Project Coordinating Committee. Good organization, consensus-based. We'll talk a little bit about it. And then in 2011, they actually formed the Truckee River Flood Management Authority. So what did we do? In 1996, the Community Coalition got together. We decided we wanted not only flood damage reduction, but we wanted ecosystem restoration, fish passage. That was from the tribe. That was a negotiation with Reed's office, and so that became part of our project as well. And then recreation and open space. The Flood Project Coordinating Committee, that first initial committee, didn't have any political authority. It certainly was founded with politicians, but there were elected officials from Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County that sat on that committee. We also had 23 members. There was a bunch that were non-voting. here's the one this right here. I will punctuate this. Consensus voting. Every vote taken had to be unanimous. One person, no matter if they had a bad hair day or not, could stop and derail. That's happened to us as well. I'll talk a little bit about it. And we were supported by the 1/8 cent sales tax. We had with us as partners Story County. Now Story County didn't sit on our, they were on the committee, but they were not one of the voting members. We had the Community Coalition. That was you guys. The guys that got together and formed kind of a leadership committee. The Airport Authority, the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, Tumwharf, our sewage treatment plant. The Nature Conservancy, what a great partnership. Cultivate that one. Nevada State Legislature, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Department of Wildlife, Reno Sparks Indian Colony, another tribe that we had to deal with. Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Land Management. Of course, our federal sponsor was the Army Corps of Engineers. Then in 2011, we dropped UNR. The reason why we had UNR in the first place is because they had 1,100 acres of land that we wanted to use as a flood detention facility, and so politically they included them. But when we formed the final Truckee River Flood Management Authority, we did not include them. We just left it with the political folks. We still have a stakeholder working group, but we still have a technical a TAC that's publicly formed TAC. We have to notice it just like you notice any normal meeting, and then we have to notice our board meetings that we have. Oh, I pointed the wrong one. That's our technical staff. There's the TAC committee. And again, I'm going to try to fly through this as much as I can. The main goals of our solution, it was very, very well thought out, well planned, but it turned out for us to be a disaster, just so that you know. We had the best intent. We wanted to do everything you could possibly do. And you can read it. It just reduced floods, this river, the ecosystem restoration, the restoration and the recreation components, we knew would be able to collect, because we're going to have to fund this thing. This was not going to be cheap. And we knew that those elements would go a long way in convincing the community that we needed to do this. And I'll tell you, disaster has struck in our little organization. You know, get away from the hard engineered solutions to a little bit more pleasing aesthetic approach to it. So if you have to build levees, let's make them look like natural ground. Let's make them look nice. So no project alternative. You saw that slide before. So what we're doing, we roped off the flood pool to the UNR property. We built levees and flood walls all the way up here from downtown all the way out, protected all this industrial area, removed the airport from the flood. This is our flood reduction component. There's about 40 elements that are associated with that, and I'm not going to go into any of them. You guys obviously know if you're going to protect Boise, you're going to have to build some facilities. There was a good question over here. What facilities can you build? You can do detention or you can build walls. And you can make them look nice, but you're going to have to do one or the other or a combination of both. No other way around it. Downtown Reno, there's that Virginia Street Bridge. We're going to replace it with a full span. Why? Because at 4 o'clock in the morning, we don't want the backhoe operators trying to grab the boatload of debris that occurs right on this kind of pier. You see where the flood walls that they built before have kind of sunk? Well, we're going to rebuild those flood walls at the proper elevation. In the Truckee Meadows Reach, which starts right pretty much at where Sparks is, just Mas o menos, we will build the series of, we've got this living river concept. The idea of terracing out, building a floodplain, putting walls at the edge, not walls, but or levees or walls, depending on what you're trying to protect. And build a very nice aesthetic, good-looking, something that people want to go to. In fact, we also will put some ball fields in there and try to make some recreational elements out of this. And this is that area that you're looking at. There's a river whipping through there. There's a whitewater park. I'm missing, it's over here. And then there's actually 2 whitewater parks that we built, one in Sparks and one in Reno. One is downtown Reno. It's more advanced, and one here in Sparks is a little bit for our intermediates and beginners. But you see, we were going to terrace where it's green, build ball fields here where it's flat, and then build a levee along Mill Street, and then continue the levee back upstream. Looking south, we were going to elevate. We were going to build a levee here, but we decided not to. We decided to elevate these homes that all flooded. This is an early 60s flood, 63 event. East Side subdivision. There is no in or out. If we built a levee there, we had no choice. They'd have to go up over the levee and back down again. Or if we built a flood wall, it would be a disaster. So we figured that we'd just elevate the houses there. And again, this is that group of homes that did not flood, but if their homes proved to be low enough, we developed a program to be able to do that home elevation. And if they're low enough, then we will elevate them to give them a little bit more freeboard. There's an example of what we're anticipating. That's a New Orleans example from the flood conference of a few years ago. You can elevate a concrete slab. Now, being a hydraulic engineer, I was telling my former director, I said, you can't elevate a concrete slab. And I go down to New Orleans, and what are you doing? Well, we're jacking the slab up. Oh, okay, I've been wrong before. There's a home. We elevated it at this point. Come on. You're not. I think I just killed the battery. It's there, but it's not. You can see over in the garage the breeze through. We elevated about halfway up the door, so it's close to 3.5 feet or so that we elevated.
I don't know if the person will work on that or not.
It very well might. There, right there. So you can see the doorway. This is the garage. But you see this house was at this elevation, and they came in and put all this beautiful. Now, we weren't going to pay for that. We weren't going to put in all that very expensive landscaping and rock, but we were going to elevate their homes and let them put in the landscaping. And they were happy. They were saying, look at anything to get out of it. Yeah, my cars, we have to, if there's going to be a flood, we have to move our cars uphill, get them out of the flood. But I'll take that any day that I don't have to take all my furniture, put it in a moving van, and then haul it out, because that's what people were doing in '97. The lower Truckee Canyon. Now remember, there's really no flood control going on there. It's all mitigation. We're now discharging more water downstream. You all know that if you discharge more water downstream, you have to mitigate for it. We were teasing our core team. Hey, you guys, you normally don't screw up downstream. Normally downstream of your flood projects, everything's supposed to work. They take that all in jest. But in all fairness, the idea was pretty much restoration. The Corps had gone in and straightened those sections of the river, and we were trying to unstraighten them. As you notice, the picture on the far right here, you see the meanders that were anticipated for this area of the river. There's kind of a before and after shot of what that looks like. And we've done some restoration projects. We've done them a lot cheaper than what the Corps estimated. The Corps is estimating. That's probably one of the biggest lessons learned. Watch that. You have to be real careful with that. Restoration, recreation, again, Lower Truckee Canyon. This is where the river bends and goes north to Pyramid Lake. At that point, right here is basically where the Paiute Tribe Reservation starts. And then they own all the way to the north, include the Pyramid Lake. Fish Passage. Now this is a face that only a mother could love. That's a kiwi, which is only indigenous to Pyramid Lake. Period. That's it. It's the only place it's found. It's like those desert pupfish, and you seem to have a number of those species. We also have an endangered or a threatened species, the Lahontan cutthroat trout. Is one that is endangered. It's not threatened. It's not endangered. The kiwi are endangered, and being the fact that it's the religious symbol of the tribe, we're a double whammy. We can't do it. We can't touch anything. And of course, they swim slow, so that if you want to build a fish ladder, they don't jump very well. So it just compounds the whole thing. This dam you see on the left is Derby Dam. It's the dam, the structure that pulls the water out of the Truckee River and injects it into the Carson watershed. Built in the early 1900s. It was part of that reclamation project I mentioned. How would we pay for our flood project? Here's some very, very good information that I can give you, and I'm always available for anybody that wants to call and discuss it. And I made that same offer to the mayor so he would know that we are certainly willing to help out any way we can. The Corps estimated our project at $1.5 billion. Wow, a lot of money. We were naive enough to believe that we could kick in. We could figure out if the Corps was going to pay, 35% of that, we then would pay $1 billion. Well, there's no way that our area can raise $1 billion. There's just no way. But so if you get the 1/8 cent sales tax that we've been collecting since 1997, that's a little misleading there. It's an old slide, but it's a little misleading because they built a couple of training facilities with that money, and so our 1/8 cent has to cover the bonding payoff for that those construction. But the remaining dollars belongs to us. And the flood fees had to raise about $400 million, not just $300 to $400 million, $400 to $450 million in order to be able to build what we wanted to build. What did we do? We went to the Nevada legislature. We got $5 million. Hey, that's $5 million that we didn't have. And we built a